Welcome to A Voice and Beyond. And today we have Dr. Teri Baydar. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Now, I've read through your bio. It is like a Bible. It is that you have done so much. I didn't even know how to condense this down. So I'm going to try and be as brief as possible and hope that I tick the most important things. So you are a renowned leadership coach and CEO whisperer, a groundbreaking thinker and expert in the field of consciousness, personal growth, and the underlying forces that shape our world. You are the CEO of White Lily Individual Development and the author of the recently published book, Flip Your Switch, which is a user's guide to a whole new mind. And this is a guide to understanding ourselves and the world around us. Well, I know there's way more that you do, as I said. Now, interestingly enough, you have an MBA with accrued training in authentic leadership, managing complexity, and behavioral economics, and you have devoted years to behavioral research and leadership development. So much going on with you. Tell us about your story. How did all this start? Start at the beginning.
How far back do you want me to go?
Well, let's just hit all those important moments that took you to this place you're at now.
All right. Full disclosure, yeah?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
we love full disclosure.
All right. So I was born clairvoyant, and when I was 12, I started to figure out that not everybody is.
Yes.
Like, how would I know?
Yeah, exactly.
How would I know?
So what were some of the things, sorry, that were happening to you before?
Well, I mean, I would see if things that were supposedly not there, they were not there in other people's perception, but they were for me. I still get a lot of sounds within sounds. And so audio, visual, taste, sometimes smell. So lots of things going on. Precog, I get a lot of precog. That has always been. And so like there was a pivotal point when I was about 12. I was hanging out with other kids, and they were laughing and talking about dreams and how weird they are. And I said, they're not really weird. They just show you what's going to happen before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I was like, no. I mean, they were like, well, no, that's not it. You're the one that's weird. Like, what are you talking about? So that was a pivotal point where I had to sort of like learn to shut my mouth and hide to cope.
To fit in.
Yeah, it's that fitting in versus belonging, which is in the book too.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Like, how did you embark on this?
So I was really good in academia. I really plunged into academia. I did 4 years of high school in 3 years, became an exchange student, went to Paris on my own when I was 16, into a French high school, finished in the French high school system, and then went on to work, live, study in France for 18 years, then a couple of years in London. But while I was in France, when I was 21, another pivotal point, which is interesting, 2112, I never thought about that. There was, I started working with what we call an unacknowledged special access project, which is behind the lines work for the French government. So these are think tanks, and this was a research institute think tank working on the function of the unconscious mind. And they were happy to get people like me with different sensory perception and all of these, whether it's clairvoyance, precog, all of this going on, to do their experience, to delve into the unconscious mind, the suggestivity also. They worked a lot on suggestion because they were trying to do some social engineering on the French population and needed to know what might or might not work and slip in below the liminal line of what we are conscious of.
Wow. That's incredible. So when did you go on to study all the rest of the things that you've studied?
So in my early 30s.
Okay.
In my early 30s.
So
MBA and all that.
you did the work with the government first and then went into the academia. How was
Then I
that?
went back to academia.
Yeah, how was the experience working for the French government behind the scenes there?
It wasn't for the French government directly, because these are things that they were unacknowledged, meaning I don't know where the funding came from, but there was nothing that said that we existed per se. We were just a think tank doing all of these experiments, but the people doing the experiments were highly linked to the government.
Okay.
So the government would ask, so different individuals would ask them, well, how do we do this? And what if we want to get French people to make more babies and we want the Muslim immigrants to make less babies? So that was a real thing.
Okay, so it was never acknowledged that it was a governmental
No,
experiment,
unacknowledged. Yeah.
unacknowledged, but clearly reading between the lines and the people that were involved, there was some link to the government.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
It's kind of like, it's like being an experimental lab for pharma, but pharma it's not linked to the pharma, but whatever we can get out of the lab, we're going to put it into pharma, and the pharma companies are going to fight for it if anything good comes out of it.
And did anything good come out of it? Do you know what the results of that experiment were?
That's a really good question. I have some knowledge of because then I became after I was there for 7 years, so I became project manager. And so one of the things we have to understand about this, and then I came to understand like how to map all of this out, right? Because 7 years is a long time.
Yes.
And so this is where I figured out patch reprogramming that I talk about in the book, which we can use for ourselves rather than on other people. And I also figured out different forms of consciousness and energy. And then back to your question, did anything come out of it? Most of what came out of it was, interestingly, difficult to apply. And I mean, these things were going on at Stanford University and lots of other places as well. It wasn't anything, it wasn't or isn't anything special. It's happening all the time right now.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting there is that there's kind of a consensus that for those in the know, that if you want to, for example, do remote viewing, the accuracy, so the remote viewing is when you displace your consciousness to someplace, like, let's say I'm here, but I'll go into your house and figure out what I'll go, and then you'll ask me questions and I'll describe the room to you. I've never been there, and that's remote viewing. So you view remotely with your consciousness, but not and then you bring back information. Used in the military all the time for decades.
Hold on a second. Can I just get this in my head right now? So you're saying that remote viewing is, let's say that I'm the one doing the viewing, that I'm sitting here, but I can view your whole place without even being there.
Yeah,
I can visualize it. So what, without ever seeing it?
Yeah.
Can people do that?
Most people can, yes. It's absolutely available to probably 90%, 85, 90% of the public can do this.
Oh my gosh. So if you can do that, you can do just about anything. You can view anything.
You can do lots of things. That's the point of me coming out and saying, flip your switch, become more of who you are, discover what I talk about in part 3 of the book, which is the daemon.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
what is the daemon?
So the daemon is the Greek term for what we would call higher self in normal language.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a part of a part of who we are
Mm-hmm.
that allows us to do things like remote viewing, be precog, hear sounds within sounds, know what's going to happen before it happens, or other elevated things. It's a place of knowing. And the daemon is your connection to the place of knowing. And we all have one.
Mm-hmm.
It's squelched in our modern societies.
Mm-hmm.
It is not developed, but we can develop it. It's available to everyone because it's already in us.
Okay, so we're born with this.
Yeah, everybody has one.
Okay. Now, before we lead into all of this, with behaviors, let's just talk about, and we can build up to this whole concept that you're talking about. So when it comes to, say, our behaviors, what are the things that shape and influence our behaviors? And do these behaviors happen at the level of our brain or our mind?
Well, first off, let's clarify brain and mind.
Yes,
Your brain is
please.
the organ.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain is an organ. Okay?
Yes.
It's like the hard drive of your
Yes.
computer. Your mind is the software. That is information consciousness. Your mind is information consciousness. It is fluid. Think of also like radio waves are information consciousness. But they can go from one radio pillar to another, like they cross, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the wireless, like all the wireless stuff we got going here, right? The Bluetooth. So if you think about something like remote viewing, it's like Bluetoothing into somebody else's house.
Okay. This is incredible stuff. It's almost,
This
it's
is
like
just the funny part. We haven't gotten to the deep part. Okay, so that's fun stuff. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So we've differentiated the brain and the mind. And then we want to know, like, there's a group mind. And the group mind, and there's lots of little, like, we could make all these little Venn diagrams and circles going over each other. So the group mind has what we call constructs in it, and social constructs and psychological constructs. Mm-hmm. So a psychological construct: women wear high heels, men don't, supposedly, right? Then there's another construct: a marriage is one man, one woman. Maybe, maybe not, but it is a construct, and you start to feel the friction around these things, right? Like, well, I understand how this feels like that's what you should do. That's the right thing to do. And that's because this construct has enough critical mass in the group mind to influence us and regulate us in our thinking and doing. Now, that is how we are regulated. And the way the group mind is sustained is the more I choose as an individual to participate in the constructs of the group mind, the more I feed the group mind. It gets bigger and stronger. But then if something happens, like, okay, a marriage is one woman and one man, and then we have other choices, LGBT plus,
Yes.
community. Oh, suddenly that group mind starts to lose a little bit of traction. It doesn't have the same weight because people are saying, no, actually, that's not a construct for me. I'm going to go over here and invest in a different construct. So then then that construct gets stronger, that group mind gets stronger, and this other one gets weaker. So if men started wearing high heels, the construct of women wear high heels would fade away.
Yeah, would diminish. Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
diminish because
Yes.
it starts to be like, well, men wear high heels too. And then it's like, well, then I guess it doesn't matter who wears high heels or not. It's no longer a construct.
Mm-hmm. How do these constructs develop? How do we, as a human, we're like born as a blank canvas, or are we?
That's too
Is
big for me to answer.
okay.
Seriously. That's a little too big for me to answer with any kind of certainty. I actually cannot say that I know that.
Yes.
I know how individuals integrate constructs growing up.
Yes.
You know,
Okay.
like, you know, you see your mom, your dad acting a certain way. Well, that's what you integrate from 0 to 7. We're sponges, so we just take it all in and think, well, that's the way it is. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's how those are. And then you go to school, and then whatever's on social media and whatever's on TV and whatever you're seeing, you soak it up and bring it in. And this is why the work I'm doing is so important, to flip your switch into thinking for yourself and being at choice and choosing how to curate the constructs that regulate you.
Mm-hmm.
You should be at choice. We start out not at choice, but we want to move into a place where we are choosing to be who we are
Okay.
with awareness and intention.
With your book, Flip Your Switch, tell us about the book and who you hope would pick up this book. Is it targeted for everybody, or is there someone with a particular interest in a certain area?
It's for absolutely everybody.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm doing here is unveiling an understanding for everybody about how their minds work without having to go into psychology, that nobody's broken per se, that there's a way to take control of your life and to curate yourself and your life, like your professional development and your personal evolution. All of that, you can have some choice about how you develop it. And so it's for absolutely everybody. I like to say, like, it doesn't matter if you're bagging groceries or Elon Musk, it's the same journey. And it's for everybody. I can only coach so many people. So I spent 10 years boiling this down into something that is really easy access, 52 chapters, 52 weeks in a year. Most chapters are about 2 pages. Read it,
Okay.
ponder. You know, this is not a formula, but once you get a little bit into the book and you are doing the pondering and you're thinking and you're questioning and you're shifting some of your ideas and you're allowing yourself to shift and change, synchronicity will kick in, because this book is not a formula that you have to do or force yourself to do. It's something you do, and then the natural forces of the universe come to support you in this work, because I'm only unveiling it. I'm not dictating it.
Mm. Mm-hmm. So you're suggesting that this is a way to be rather than saying this is the way to be.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
I'm like, and what I'm doing is I'm not even saying this is, I'm saying, look at this, what I'm telling you, this aspect, like we just talked about social constructs and group mind. Look at this. Think about this. How does this affect you? Where do you see it show up in your life? What is there? What would you like to be there? What would you like not to be there? How will you change this? What do you want to do?
Mhm.
So I'm leaving it all open.
Mhm.
So by giving the person that ability to be all open about it, if they do some of the clearing work of being of answering some of those how, what, where questions that I just gave you, then things shift for them.
Yes. So do we need to start at a place where we have to shift the clutter or the mind shift the mindset? Where do we need to begin as individuals if we want to embark on this journey of discovering another way to be?
So let's get into that a little bit in the
Yes.
structure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's written in 3 parts. Part 1, the basics of mind. We talk about the mind, the brain, and everything in a very layman's terms, understanding what is or isn't consciousness, and the 2 forms of consciousness, war and love consciousness. 2 basic forms of who we are. Go into that in a second.
Yes.
Part 2, how to shift. All the little things you can do to shift. Try this, try that, try this, try that. Think about this, think about that. How does it show up in your life? What would you like to have instead? What would
Can
you
we
do?
just pause there for a second? When we talk about things that we want to shift, what are some of the concepts that you suggest we can shift? Like, is it fear? Is it
Yes.
like, what are some, can we label some of those things?
Oh, I mean, it's endless. It's how you see yourself, your internal narrative, how to deal with your inner saboteur voice or inner critic, how
Mm,
to understand other people, how to, because the shift is this fundamental shift from war consciousness to love consciousness. So when you start the book, you have no idea what love consciousness is. War consciousness, we know what that is. We're living it mostly every day. So war consciousness is this desire to capture, contain, and control something, someone, even ourselves, our bodies, our bank, our job, our boss, our children, our spouses, something, someone we want to capture, contain, and control. That is war consciousness. And that is born from this idea of separateness. You and I are separate. Somebody wins, somebody loses. Somebody's right, somebody's wrong. Somebody's up, somebody's down.
mhm.
So this duality of separation, okay,
Mhm.
that is war consciousness. It is everywhere.
Yes, it's in our singing voice community as well, the way that we speak to our students, that we may say to them, that sounds good, that sounds bad, that was right, that was wrong. I don't think you should do this that way. I think that is the way it should be done.
Correct. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. And then there's this other form of being, this other way of being, which is love consciousness. That is where you take a step back, where you want to comprehend at a larger level. You have not right or wrong, you have multiple dates, multiple points of data of what is optimal or constructive versus suboptimal and destructive.
Mhm.
And so things are a lot more expanded, open. In that state, we understand that we are neither independent nor codependent. We are interdependent. We are all parts of this thing on planet Earth called humanity. And we are part of nature, we are part of systems, we are part of countries, we are part of households. We have all of these different parts that we are, and all of it's okay.
Mhm.
Neither right nor wrong, it's all okay.
Mhm.
And from that place of understanding and being, we are constructive. War consciousness is fundamental reductionist and destructive.
Yes.
Love consciousness is expansive, creative, and constructive. And we shift. We can be in either state.
I suppose, depending on the situation and the circumstance we find ourselves in, we may need to go into that war consciousness area for our own safety and for our own protection. No?
Yes and no.
Yes.
In the beginning, yes. But then there's a place where, you see, once you embrace fully and you go into, you've gone through the processes described in the book, you've switched. Your command center is no longer in calculating, manipulating, left brain thinking. Your command center is over here in your right mind, connected to your daemon, your higher knowing. And then from this place, what you would normally call war consciousness, it just becomes logistics, boundaries, and priorities. It loses its energy as a form of consciousness because you've shifted your command center over here. This is who you are. This is where you're operating from. And this is why I work with leaders and CEOs, because if we can get the CEO over here, it's a whole new game. It's a whole new game.
Let's start at the individual for a second. There are a couple of words that I went, aha, this really resonates with me. One of them was the inner critic. And then you talked about boundaries. And that's something that I'm really working hard on fixing in my life at the moment, because I have realized that I've come to a point in my life where there's been a lot of boundary violations, and I have allowed those to happen because they can kind of sneak up on you. And so I have become hyper aware at the moment about those boundaries and really starting to enforce them. So we'll get to that in a moment. But the inner critic, now this is something that I believe would help the singing voice community, because as a creative, our inner critic is on steroids. It's always switched on. So if someone was reading your book, what would be some of the processes then that would help get to that right side of the brain that would help deal with that inner critic?
Well, so the inner critic, and I go into this, the saboteur voice, what I call it generally, the saboteur voice.
Self-sabotage, imposter syndrome. You can kind of put them all under that one header.
Yes, exactly. And so there are several chapters on that. The saboteur voice is fundamentally, when it's sabotaging, coming from a place of war consciousness, okay? Because it's destructive. It's holding you back. It's keeping you small. It's making you think you're not good enough. And so because it's in that petty self place, calculating, manipulating, trying to destroy your growth. That same voice, if it shifts over into love consciousness, becomes a good friend who tells you honestly what you're good at and what you're not good at, what you should pursue or not pursue, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same energy. It's the same sort of functionality. It's simply because it's living in one side of us, in that war consciousness of calculate, manipulate, capture, contain, control, be afraid, don't stick your head out, it might get cut off, like all of that going on. And so that's why it's important to get to the end of the transformation and understand that this transformation takes you to a place where absolutely everything and anything is either destructive or constructive. A surgeon can save a life, or some criminal can take one with the same blade. Medicines, drugs can destroy your life or save your life.
Yes.
It's who we're being while we're doing whatever it is we're doing. Everything can be on the spectrum. It can go either way. Anything you do.
It sounds like we're really messed up as human beings. How did we get to this point?
We are. Yes.
How messed up are we?
Well, I mean, we are, because if you look around, right, there's a war consciousness is mostly what we see.
And what we hear on the news and on social media. It's everywhere.
Exactly. Because it's coming from the petty self. And we're being in our petty self, our war consciousness, as we're doing whatever we're doing. And that's the result. If we shift our hearts and minds to a higher level, into love consciousness and a different way of thinking and being, the results automatically change. It's cause and consequence.
Why is it then that we behave in this manner? Why do we spend so much time in war consciousness? Other than we may not know any better, but I believe in, this is just my opinion, that in life, every action, there's a payback. I mean, you know, people say, oh, I was the victim of, but in many scenarios, that victim is well aware that harm is going to happen, and they put themselves in that situation anyway, because there is a certain payback for them. Whether it's like, okay, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what that person just did to me. Or they put their hand in the lion's den and their hand gets bitten off, and they go, oh, I lost my hand to the lion. Okay, so I'm just using those as a like terrible examples of payback. You know, there's always that payback. So what is the payback for us as human beings living in that war consciousness?
I mean, I don't know exactly, but I mean, it's kind of like, if you think about, it was like what I was saying earlier, like if you're being in a state of war consciousness, what you reap is what you sow. That's what we're talking about, right? And I don't think of it necessarily as payback. It's just cause and consequence. If I plant a tomato seed, I'm going to get a tomato plant. Right? So and the reason that everything is so mixed up is that we have in our nature this willingness to settle for the war consciousness, not work to get to the love consciousness. You know, we settle for our petty selves.
Yes.
And there's a lot of fear. There are societal group mind factors that I'm very interested in, obviously, because again, we talk about how the group mind regulates us. And so we have these beliefs, like you even were using the word payback. And I'm like, that's kind of a war conscious idea in itself. Payback.
Yes.
It's crime and punishment. Whereas I'm talking about cause and consequence. Do you see the difference?
Yes. Yes.
So it's like it's built in. So that's why we have to think so hard about it. And we have to take a book, read 2 pages, look at it, think about it, go for a walk, think about it, listen to a podcast, you know, look at the words, maybe read it again, do an exercise. You know, that's why it's so much work. It's because it's sort of like we are fish in muddy water. And then, you know, I'm saying there's mud in the water, war consciousness, and everybody's going, wagging their tails, stirring up the mud, going, what mud? What are you talking about? What mud? I don't see any mud. Do you see any mud? No, I don't see any mud. Because we're all stirring it up all the time. So it's that stepping back, chill, let it settle, and think, breathe. So we can let some of it, maybe we can start to notice the difference between clear water and mud.
Mm. 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 So with the CEOs and the leaders that you work with, what's the kind of work that you do with those people?
They're really on a journey. Most of my clients are either social entrepreneurs or HR executives, or learning and development, a lot of them. And so they're all trying to, help shape a company, shape a culture in a positive direction. And so by, on the one hand, coaching them and teaching them all these constructs that are in the book, taking them through that personal journey of elevation, they get to teach it, preach it out to whomever. And I say preach it, but there's no religion behind it. It's just who we are as humans as we elevate.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that by them modeling the model, they're showing what's possible. And so they really get a kick out of it.
What kinds of results are they getting with their teams?
A lot of really interesting things happen in all different ways. They get a lot more understanding of who they're dealing with. Friction goes way down between people. Creativity goes way up. Innovation goes way up. Product development will go way up, because that's all the creative side of things. Connectivity will kick in. They'll do more with less. They'll have, I don't know, just a lot of the very simple stuff. People will be ill less.
Mm-hmm.
People are willing to step up more when there's a crisis. They identify more with the company. They have what I call an emotional salary, whereas most people going to their jobs don't have an emotional salaries, but teams working under these kinds of CEOs and HR directors and leaders will start to realize that they have an emotional salary, because they'll start to get it from just those micro shifts in culture and behavior that are happening around them. Yeah, I mean,
so as individuals, what's a couple of basic principles that we can apply, like to elevate our happiness, our impact, or our influence?
okay, I will go to like the beginning of the book, the basics of mind. There are some basic myths. Think of it like it's your mental emotional landscape. You got to kind of clear it out, look at what's there, and pull some of the weeds. I'm going to pull a couple weeds.
Mm-hmm.
Big one, massive one, holding you back. The happiness formula lie. The happiness formula, which is a lie, is that once I get the right house, the right spouse, the right job, the right dress size, the right this, the right that, I just get that gig, get the right, the right place, or I get that job, or I just hit that many followers, then I will have happiness. I will be happy. Now that formula,
I agree. It is a massive myth.
happiness is a state of being. It is not calculatable. And so that is that left brain kind of, I'm going to just, that somehow I can quantify by adding up all these things to equal happiness. Never worked for anybody, never will. And yet, we're so hooked on it. It is a massive construct of the group mind, planet-wide, that gets you stuck and keeps you down. It is a lie.
Mm.
It's a lie.
It's like getting on a treadmill and you can't get off because you're always looking for the next. I learnt that quite a few years ago.
Yep.
And you're usually looking for external things to make you happy. They're not internal.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, I mean, we can also do it with the internal redesign. You can do it to your mind too, which is kind of bad too. We need to do a little bit of reshaping in the mental emotional landscape, but also going around in your mental emotional landscape thinking that it has to be perfect is also like, you cannot apply the formula to your mind either. You have to notice the reality of your mind and be with it and be okay with it.
Mm.
And just, well, this is who I am and this is where I am and these are the actual thoughts I'm having. Do I want to have other thoughts? Yeah, these are not really good ones. What could I have instead? What would work? I mean, I'm literally redesigning the thought patterns around what
Do
you're
we
doing.
do we all have the ability to facilitate this change? Can we all make this change? Or are there certain personality types or traits like narcissists or people who have had some kind of brain injury? Like, can we
I
all,
don't know.
what about
I don't know.
narcissists? We don't know?
I don't know. That's beyond my field. I do know that pretty much every normal person that I've ever met
Mm-hmm.
has been able to do that. I know certain narcissists that have been my clients that have made leaps and bounds. I don't know if those people would have done it on their own.
Yes, yes, you can't
Okay.
prove that. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I put the screws to them, so that's, they paid me for it. So they wanted
Yes,
it,
yes, yes.
so but I don't know. And as for brain injuries, I don't know.
Mm. What's one way that we can unlock our confidence and I love that you talk about influence. Let's talk about confidence and influence for a second. How can we shift those? What are a couple
Um,
of steps that we can take to shift those?
in part one, I talk about the different personas, and we have a deep part of ourself that we need to explore and nourish. That's where confidence comes from. It's deep within us. It's when we're loyal to who we are at our core, when we reach for calling and we stop calculating about whether or not we should do something, but we just know. And so the whole development is going to give everybody who does it an incremental shift towards the confidence, because it's all about going inside and being who you are naturally.
Mm,
The more you do that, the more you are confident, because you're not hanging your hat on something out here. Your hat is on your own head. You're keeping it, you're like, I have a chapter, mind your own business. You're keeping it to yourself. You're taking it to a place where you are, and once you're in that state, and we all more or less can get there. The book is the whole how to get there. The more you do that, the more you're confident. The more you do that, the more you're happy, at ease. You have less fear. I'm actually starting a podcast of my own, and the first episode is resiliency and leadership. And it's with two of my clients, and we go through a lot of the stuff that you go through as my client, and understanding that you become naturally resilient. You can move with ease and confidence because you've let go of looking for validation on the outside. You become self-validating. But it's a process.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And that's, I mean, some of the simple things is take care of yourself,
mm. Self-care.
meditate, meditation,
Mm-hmm.
walks in the woods,
Mindfulness.
mindfulness, think,
Mm-hmm.
also contemplate.
Mm-hmm.
Contemplate, there's meditation where you don't think, and then there's, hey, how about you think about something, not in a left brain calculating way, but open it up. What matters? Ask yourself,
Daydreaming.
yes, ask yourself some big fuzzy questions. See what comes up.
Mm. Mm. Some of this stuff, people may say, wow, this is really woo-woo.
Oh
But
yeah.
you are clearly a highly intelligent person. You know your stuff. I acknowledge all of that. Have you ever been silenced or people like tried to quieten you down, or they've felt this is too much?
Not yet too much. I get snarky remarks on social media. Just talking about love consciousness is enough to get snarky, hateful remarks. Just because people in war consciousness who believe that that's the only way to be and are fully invested in their defensiveness and aggression, they're very disturbed by somebody going around talking about love consciousness and that we can elevate humans.
Mm, mm.
So, but so far, no biggies.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. What's your vision for humanity? How would you like to visualize the world in the future?
I see, and this is actually something I actually do for certain people. I foresee whole industries that are screaming to be born. Everything that centers around regeneration, regeneration being like the center word there, regenerative farming, regenerative medicine, regenerative waste management, regenerative manufacturing, and the list goes on. There will be a massive shift in economic models. Right now, historically, we have inherited with the patriarchy, because it's a gradual historic journey. We have a pyramid system
Mm-hmm.
that where planet is at the bottom, where it's getting trashed. We're using and extracting. It's an extraction model where we extract from the bottom and bring it up to the top, so that people at the top can renew their yachts every couple of years or whatever they're doing with loads and loads of money. And then those at the bottom don't have enough, but they give their blood, sweat, and tears to organizations that extract the value they add, gets monetized, and goes up to the top. And this model will eventually have to implode. So as I'm working with social entrepreneurs and all of these people, what we're trying to do and establish is other business models and economic structures so that we can have a like a safety net, an economic safety net that allows when that structure disintegrates, I would say, preferably over just collapsing,
Mm-hmm.
that we will have constellation fashion, a network of partnership model, love conscious models of business and economics, which is not based on extraction or exploitation of planet and other people or countries, but it's based on cooperation, love consciousness, creativity, and synergy, where we get added value, where by coming together, there's added values. And it's this it sort of compiles, because it's all of these clusters that work together. And there are also internal business models that some of us are working on as well, as to how to internally make a company profitable in this cluster fashion. Because this is the thing, people get really scared that they're going to lose the profitability because they're thinking from their petty self, what's in it for me? In that war consciousness, you and I are separate. Somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. And that's what's happening in the extraction model. Now, if we step out of that for a minute, we notice that the value created is what makes profit. If you're creating a product or a service that gives value to people, they're going to transact and give you money. And that transaction will create profit. That is a given in business. Yes. Otherwise, you don't survive.
Yes.
And so I have to debunk that all the time with business people, because that's their number one fear that comes up immediately. If I change my business model, I'm not going to make money. I'm going to die. I'm like, no, you continue to create value instead of extracting value from somebody else's work.
Interesting. So interesting. So what do you believe your legacy will be?
I hope my legacy will be that everybody will walk around talking about love and love consciousness and war consciousness and social constructs and group mind and a lot of these concepts that I've put together, and that will one day be common language.
Because they're all new languages, they're all new words at the moment. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to this interview that we may have not spoken about?
Yeah. In visualizing the future, I want to give you an image.
Okay.
Of one of the things that is happening here and now with you and me. Right now. Visualize the planet Earth, like the globe, all right? And there are these golden, like these little fireflies, these little lights here and there, okay? These little golden dots here and there. And then between the golden dots that are kind of scattered all over the planet, there's one here in Boston and there's one there in Australia. And there's a line between, and they cross, and they start to form this web. And this is like a web of light. This web of light that people like you are forming. Podcasts like this are creating this web of light. And I believe that this is a wonderful thing that we're doing. All of these little light workers all over the planet, creating this delicate, seemingly delicate web of light, and that it is going to contribute massively to getting to what I call pure positive critical mass in how we see the world and what we're doing in it, and how we come to understand things like love consciousness, or you can call it something else. It doesn't matter. A rose is a rose by any other name. And that we elevate together.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. Well, where can people find your book? We will share the links in the show notes, but is the book on Amazon, or where can they find the book?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon. Flip Your Switch, A User's Guide to a Whole New Mind, Dr. Teri Baydar. And you can find, if you're interested in coaching, you can find me at whitelilycoaching.com. White lily, like the flower, whitelilycoaching.com. You can find me on Insta, Dr. Teri Baydar 1. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Teri Baydar. And I now have also loveconscioushuman.com, which is a work in progress, but it's also where I'm trying to find ways to consolidate and bring together different support, educational support for people who want to go on the love conscious human path and elevate.
Amazing. Well, I would love to thank you for your time. Appreciate the work that you're doing. It is a whole new world. It is opening up a whole new world. I think I'm going to have to listen back to this a few times to totally absorb everything that you've spoken about. There was so much information in such a short amount of time, but I appreciate you. I appreciate that you've been here, spent the time with me, and wish you all the very best, Dr. Teri.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.